I wrote that essay in 2012 thinking I was going to rise out of those ashes like a motherfucking phoenix. Not necessarily. Not necessarily.
You're still here.
I'm still alive.
When it's night and you're nowhere, you're listening to Why Are We Here?
No. Why are we here?
Why are we here?
Why are we here?
A podcast about being lost and trying to get found.
Or rather, creating art, raising kids, and not losing hope in the middle of nowhere. I'm Dawn Goodwin.
And I'm Chris Reno. And this is our first episode. Okay, so here we are. We're in a soundproof room, just you and I. Why is this essay back in your life?
That's interesting, yeah. This encapsulates why I'm here in Georgia. I guess I feel like I shipwrecked here. And I don't know why I feel the need to let everybody know that I shipwrecked here. I don't know why that has to be part of my narrative.
Where is here?
I always call it the Alabama border. I don't know why. It's like a region more than a town. Because the Alabama border lets people know.
It's a qualifier?
Yeah. This is my backdrop.
Why is Alabama worse than Georgia?
I feel like when I go to Alabama, it's like holding your breath and diving in. It's like, because I feel like it's like you've passed a certain point. It's like there's a certain level of neglect it's like institutionalized neglect. That's probably not fair to the people who live there and love it, but it felt like too many people trying to survive for too long. I feel like Alabama is like the blood bag for Georgia. I don't know if we're sucking off of it. Do we share a water supply? Maybe Georgia is maybe we're sucking the groundwater out of underneath Alabama. That's why I feel it. But I feel like Georgia's benefiting off Alabama's demise somehow. We're better, but only on the backs of those bodies. But yeah, shipwrecked here. I felt like I shipwrecked here, and
What ship were you on?
The SS Delusion. The SS Garth Brooks. I don't know why I continuously blame country music, but it was at the time in my early 20s, in the late 90s, country song was at its had reached an apex of commercial explosion of country fried dreams, like Trisha Yearwood and Vince Gill. God, I had a big girl boner for the South. Money doesn't matter because all you need is love. You got to, cooking in the kitchen, and you got the corn in the rows out. Oh, Tim McGraw's still peddling that bullshit, but pointing your rocking chairs toward the west and all that stuff. That's stuff I talk about in Crash Bang Burn, my second book. But you asked me why this story came up, right?
Yeah. Does it have a title?
Yeah, I don't like the title though. It's called Buying Some Light, but it's pseudo deep.
That's the 2012 title.
Mm-hmm.
What would the 2017 title be?
There's no hope. Oh, okay. It was interesting to go back to this because I really get irritated with I always had this feeling I don't know if I'm irritated with who I really am or with my place in this world, in this void. This state of affliction, poverty, single parenthood, this sort of being out, an outlier, physically, just an outlier of America, banished to American Siberia. All right. So what should I do? Just read?
Yeah.
What do you need? I would ask her, but I couldn't ask her that because it was this dress. The dress I was wearing made it all wrong. It wasn't the uniform of a fellow warrior. It was the beacon of naivete of free time and hobbies, of a non-addicted white girl who changed her oil at Jiffy Lube and vacuumed the interior too, as if it would stave off our collective and inevitable doom. "Do you need any help?" said the imaginary me, leaning in her car window with a sack of McDoubles and a fresh mesh bag of Florida oranges. "Here you go. This should solve all your problems." Couldn't I do something? I had $20 in cash, and the AC worked in my minivan, and I had good tires and a full tank because I'd been cared for all my life. I'd been helped to know how to care for myself. She could sleep in my bed, and I could fill up the bath for her babies, and I could pour their favorite cereal in the kitchen and make them feel what I sometimes felt when everybody was clean and fed and I had a quiet space to stir my tea. It's all going to be all right. But I kept walking straight because it wasn't going to be all right. I let her snap off behind me like a slingshot, out into the blinding anonymity of the baking asphalt of Walmart, to a place I wouldn't ever have to see or live in because for some unknowable reason I was born here and she was born there, and that was a fact not made better by unwanted charity or free cheeseburgers.
Good.
Yeah, I think that sums it up. Just like nothing really makes sense. No, life isn't fair.
What's not in this essay from the real experience? Can you remember the real experience, or has it all been transfigured?
No, I remember the real experience. I remember that taking that woman to Best Western, and I remember also being very fearful and wanting to go home. Just wanted to go home. I was afraid something was going to happen to me. I just stepped into her life, and something was off, and it was going to take me down. Like, by interceding and helping, I was somehow going to be killed and have my body show up. I guess that's my constant fear, is my body showing up in a barrel at the bottom of Lake Carroll. That rhymes. Today they pulled a steel drum out of the base of out of the sludgy bottoms of Lake Carroll. Inside we found the remains of a local author and single mom.
Well, that's a push-pull.
Yeah, wanting to help and then wanting to hide. You know, I felt really like well-adjusted and like well-funded and privileged. But in truth, like, everything I was buying that day was on food stamps. The dress I was wearing was a credit card. I put it on a credit card. Like, I had, it was like, it was all that my illusion that I was doing better was created on a mountain of debt and lies.
Yeah.
So, in a way, maybe she was doing better than me. I often feel fortunate that a man isn't trying to kill me. I wonder how long I'll get to...
That's the sound of my eyebrows raising in the lawn.
I know, but how many of these women fear for their lives or are regularly abused? A lot of them. I mean, granted, it's not Tanzania where the villagers are accusing local ladies of witchcraft, breaking into their huts with machetes to stop the bad luck. But we're not that far from that.
That's what I like about this essay, is the sense that the distance between you is not great.
That's funny. I always think to myself, and I picture myself like future successful Dawn, like, what is she doing? Like, I always picture her like helping the women of Carroll County, but giving to them the way I've been helped. I have this fantasy of setting up a center for, like, where I just, like, you can live free with room and board and meals. The only thing you have to do is create stuff, like create art. Like, imagine that. And, like, because that's what I was given. My family gave me that for, they afforded me years where I could just write books and recover from, my divorce and the custody battle. That gave me a new lease on life. And I wish I could do that. I wish I could pay that forward. And then I have a secondary fantasy where that all goes wrong. it all, like, there's all kinds of corruption, and the people I hire are like.
Well, that sounds like a TV show then.
Didn't that happen to Oprah? She set up a school in Africa, and then everybody was beating the children there. Like, even Oprah isn't immune from corruption. I don't know what that need is in me, anyway.
That's something I'd like to see. That's an amazing vision.
That's the sound of me making a slow jerk off motion with my right hand, because I hate these well-meaning dreams. They irritate me, you know. They're really great, but I don't know. I'm always amazed by people who actually make things happen. Like, how in the fuck do they actually make things happen? And, like, do you have to give away parts of your soul to do anything of any measure in this life? Is that how people make shit happen? We should talk about being what's it like to be an artist out here in Carroll County? Like, what does it mean? I don't know how to speak about it. I don't know what other artists, writers, actors out here, you know, I don't know if we all have the same experience. I see, you know, varying levels of success, you know, and I see a lot of small town creative people who've done well in a small town way. I see other people trying to break into the business in a bigger way. I see a lot of actors trying to land small roles or any roles they can get. I see writers trying to pitch their books, their essays, win contests, you know, trying to get awards or accolades
or eyeballs.
I don't
Somebody
know.
To listen.
Yeah, it can be very. I don't know if that's just me. Like, things. I'll always take the depressing perspective. I get so easily depressed, right? And there's so much self-promotion and so much trying with so little success.
Define success.
Well, right. That's the thing, right? Success is different. Success is different is a different definition for everybody, and everybody has a different instrument to play, right? So that's why there is no one brass ring, and you have to find your own song and your own crowd, and you can't compare your journey. Why are those things so hard to remember moment to moment? And why does self-promotion make me so, like, I never feel life is more meaningless than when I hear another artist self-promoting. Yet I've done the same, and what other options are there? It just seems so futile. It just seems so futile. It makes me angry, especially when I get advice to self-promote more. And I don't hear other artists talking about the futility of it all and the pain because I wonder too, what's their definition of success? What's your definition of success, Chris?
Mine?
Do you want it to be after you've died?
No, it doesn't have to be after I'm dead. But at some point, you know, someone notices and says, you know, I see what you're doing there, and it moves me. And
that's funny. I heard you say that to a student just an hour ago.
What did I say?
You said to him, "Oh, I see what you're doing there." You were looking at something he was working on. That's a nice thing to hear. I guess that's what we all want to hear. Is, I see what you're doing there.
Possible alternate title for podcast is, I see what you're doing there.
It can also be like a scolding parent. I see what you're doing there. Put it down. Put it down. Down. Drop it. I think maybe I come to this place maybe every 6 months, 3 to 6 months, depending. It's like I wake up in a cold sweat and think, you know, I feel like I'm adrift in the Pacific, and my engine has died. Not only that, I'm in like the floating island of plastic trash.
Not only have you crash landed, but you crash landed into the pile of trash, into the vortex of trash.
Oh, and I wonder if anyone else out there, other creative people who are trying to make art, I'm sure they do. Or maybe we're all by nature depressive people. if you wake up in the night feeling like your life is totally off track. And what are you doing to make it better, Dawn? What are you doing?
To make what better, and for whom?
To cultivate that sense of fulfillment. You know, that's a frustrating thing, is that everything I read says, you know, that sense of fulfillment doesn't come from your accomplishments doesn't come from externals, right? It doesn't come from validation. It doesn't come from awards or relationships or anything. It comes from, like, accepting the moment just as it is. And their fulfillment is in the moment. And yet that feels like a kind of death. Like, to accept the moment as it is to accept that nothing that I want in life has or am I being ungrateful? Or have I set the bar too high for myself? That's the question I'm always asking myself. Like, if I were to be happy with life as it is right now, which is out here in the trash flotilla, is that dropping the ball? Is that, have I given up? Or is that the pathway? It's always that moment when you give up, right? That you enter a new space. But giving up is such a bad feeling. There's a kind of surrender to it that doesn't feel good. Because you want to try and control. You want to direct the ship.
Is surrender giving up, though?
Well, you ask the wise Dawn, and she'll say no. Or you ask a religious person, and they say no. You hand it over to Jesus and let him take the wheel. I mean, I think there's validity to that. I wouldn't trust it to Jesus. but the act of that's the thing. It's such a crazy balance between surrender and action. Like, surrender with no action, you know, you have to have both in a dance. You surrender, and then you push the ball forward. And you surrender, and you push the ball forward. But all surrender or all pushing, neither, you know. So I guess that's what I'm asking. What's the ball I'm made to push forward right now? I don't know. And, like, what am I here to do? I find myself asking that in, like, the class I was teaching and the latest thing I read at the variety show. I have this, it's reached an intensity lately. Like, what am I here to do? Like, why? And if I just enjoy my life, I'll just disappear into the wallpaper with everyone else who's enjoying their life. Or is anybody enjoying their life?
So an element of sacrifice is required.
How do you mean?
It's spoken as if it's an either or. So to be successful, to find your meaning, to find your purpose, is the opposite of being happy.
Yeah, because to wonder what it is to not be engaged with it. Can you be happy and still be searching? The only way I could do that is if I had faith or an inner knowing that I would find it. But there's, like, this sort of deep pessimism that says, you know, look where you are. It's night and you're nowhere. I get so mad at the whole paradigm of being me. It's really fucking exhausting. If I don't push my art out there, it feels like I'm being grilled on a piece of steak and getting my flank grilled on one side, you know? So I hop up and I push the ball forward, you know? But at the same time, I'm always so there's a really shy part of me that likes to be, I need to be invited. Like, I don't just want to peddle my shit. I want to know that it's safe to talk about it because there's a demand or a desire to hear it, but that's not realistic. I have to just say it and speak about it because I need to. Well, look, I've created that right here. speaking to you. I've created a safe space with somebody who wants to hear that then I can share it broadly and let the chips fall.
What chips are there to fall?
After I share something, after I've created something and I have shared it. It's always that feeling of, oh shit, they're looking at me. They're listening to me. Oh, Dawn, you fucking idiot.
So it's a push-pull.
Yeah, it's a compulsion to push, and then I have to retreat and hide, and then I've got to push forward. Because the retreating and hiding is misery. I'm much happier when I'm putting work out there in the world. We talked for a minute about motherhood.
Yeah.
So I have to constantly remind myself that I'm I've tried not to let being a single parent get in the way of being a creative person. But this is what I was saying to you earlier, is that it just pulls you into the trenches with the rest of humanity. And I think there's a lot of value in that. I think it deepens you and robs you of your dreams, kills your spirit, and breaks you. But so I think that's where I'm at. I mean, the calamities, went through the loss of custody, the robberies, the house fire, and recently my son moving in with his dad. You know, it's broken me. It's like, oh, you can put in 15 years of your best self and still have nothing to show for it at the other end. Like, that is the nature of life. Like, that's the nature of parenting. That's the nature of, and I think until you have kids, you don't know that kind of futility. It really forces you to let go, or not. It doesn't force you. A lot of people never let go, but it really forces you to realize that you don't have a lot of control. You can try to steer the ship, but you don't have a lot of say. You can do the best. Even you can do your best work and be your best self. That doesn't mean anything. And if I were to go back and do it again, I would have to do it the same way, because I have to give my best, and I have to, because I have to. So having kids and caring for them, I never even questioned doing anything else from the day they were born. Never questioned doing anything else. I tried to take my kids and go back to Connecticut to raise them. And the ensuing court battle pointed me right back and basically told me that I could never, my kids were going to be raised here, whether I was here or not. So I never even questioned the alternative. I never even questioned, would I leave and go pursue a career, go chase my dreams? Because my first and foremost dream was to raise children and raise my children, be a role model for them. But I think that's the crisis I have now, is like, in raising them, I had to give up so much of myself that am I even a role model anymore? Like, I find myself as they become teenagers, I'm looking at what I gave up. And yeah, I was able to plant a good, healthy crop of subversive ideas in my kids' heads, which was always my goal, was to raise people who are thinkers and not sheep. But you can't guarantee that either. You can't control how they see life, or even if they'll like you. So I guess that's where I've arrived at now. It's like that's why this story came up. So for the first time, I'm sort of asking myself, like, wow, I'm taking stock of the loss of 15 years of my life and saying, I'm just looking at it. And I think this is a point where other parents are like, you don't want to, maybe they dread this reckoning where you have to reckon with the self you left behind when you first had children.
Don't you suppose that's a natural point at this part of the process of raising children?
Yeah, and I see a lot of other parents who they don't ever have to face it.
Can you fast forward to a time 5 or 10 years in the future when you look back on this moment, it doesn't seem like futility or wasted time?
Well, that would be great. I don't really think it is wasted time. And I don't want to be comforted either. I just get the nature of life never ceases to disgust me. It's such a, this life is, I don't know, and everyone is so lost trying to do their best. It's like nobody was given an instruction manual that's correct. Like, we've all been lied to about how it works, where we're headed, what we're supposed to do, and even the rules of the game. That's the part of nihilism that I love, because it's like, okay, that makes sense. The fact that nothing makes sense to me.
Nihilism can be a positive state of being.
I think it's like a dose of medicine. I can't stay in that space. But when the pressures and burdens just weigh down on you, nihilism is just like a tall, cold glass of iced tea. It's like, oh, I will die, and so will you, and everyone you know. Your children will die. We're all going to die, and it'll be like we were never here. It frees you. It's just that thought is like a freeing. It's like, oh, I don't have to have a fucking legacy. I don't have to have a body of work. I don't have to even make good art. I can just be a corpse. Free, an endless sleep, where you don't have to worry about beauty or clothing or rent. Your children's happiness, your fucking oppressive children's happiness. Career. Yeah, so I think it's like a shot of B12 in your ass. That's what nihilism is. It like rights the ship right away for me. But I don't think I could stay there, because I think that if you stay there, you just end up just shooting heroin. Living outside of McDonald's. I don't know. What do nihilists, what do professional full-time nihilists do? I wonder if anyone else out there sees the futility of it and makes them giggle.
Clearly.
I don't see a lot of that in my local artist community. We're all trying really hard. I guess that's what I want to talk about, is the futility of it all. I think that's at the heart of all of this. Is that, I wrote that essay in 2012 thinking I was going to rise out of those ashes like a motherfucking phoenix. Not necessarily. Not necessarily.
You're still here.
I'm still alive. Yeah. I mean, that's what self-fulfillment is, right? Is enjoying this moment. There it is, right? It takes me like, it's like a fucking Rubik's Cube. I have to twist it like 45 different ways to arrive back at that thought, which is, I already lost it again. Wait, what was it? Shit, it's gone. Okay, yeah. It's where you accept that this imperfect, flawed, fucked up moment is perfect. Because we don't really understand what perfection is as humans. We've been trained to think it's like, what is perfection? Everyone's definition is different, and each one is equally flawed. But this moment, just as it is perfect, and you're right where you're supposed to be, right at this moment. Like, that's what I don't hear enough of. Maybe that's why I'm doing this, so that I can have my own voice repeating it back to me. Like, you're right where you're supposed to be. Maybe I should do some self-affirmation tapes. I can feel it. Deep thoughts with Brayley. Oh my God, that's what I should do. I should deep thoughts with Cross and Brayley.
It could be a segment.
They wouldn't have deep thoughts though. It wouldn't work.
That's the whole idea, is they're not deep thoughts.
I need some help with that one. I just wish I knew what the next step was. I don't want to even put that question out there, because then I'm sure people will be like, this is what you should do.
The next step is episode 2.
Yeah.
You've been listening to Why Are We Here? A podcast about being lost and trying to get found. It was produced and edited by Don Goodwin and Chris Reno.
The music in this episode is by Ty Boffman. You can hear more of his stuff on YouTube at Glassbender Official. Learn more about the art we're making in the middle of nowhere on Facebook at Why Are We Here Podcast.
Join us next time.
And thanks for listening.